Okay, next speaker. So now you've heard a little bit of what it's like at the top of organized Scientology and a little bit of the effects of how that can trickle down into the real life world of a Scientologist. The next speaker is Steve Hassan. Hassan. Steve is a former high up in the Moonies. He's the author of 2 books, which I'm going to show you, Combating Mind Control and Releasing the Bonds, Empowering People to Think for Themselves. He's a well-known expert and counselor to former cult members. A recent article by Steve was all over the forums. I saw it on Why We Protest, for example, on It's Time to... It was published in the Huffington Post about ending Scientology's IRS tax exemption. You can find a great deal about Steve at his website, which I'm sure he can talk about. Steve got out of the Mooney cult in 1976, and then since then has been helping others get out of that and other dangerous cults. He studied mind control and brainwashing, and he's helped lots of people and gotten lots of families together again. And again, his books, Combating Mind Control and Releasing the Bonds, Empowering People to Think for Themselves. Steve's done an awful lot of good to get a lot of people their freedom back, their freedom of thought and their freedom of association back. So without further ado, to Steve.
Thank you so much. I just want to applaud the courage of Larry and Nancy and so many other former top executives, as well as family members and friends who've firsthand experienced the tyranny of destructive mind control groups like Scientology. It's unbelievable in the 21st century in the United States of America that we have organizations that are imprisoning people and exploiting people, depriving them of their human rights, and essentially in their own stated materials wanting to take over the world, wanting to abolish the Constitution, wanting to enforce their own black and white, us versus them, good versus evil ideology. And this is my life work. As Larry was saying, I was involved with the Moon cult. Does anyone here remember what the Moonies are or know who the Moonies are? Thank goodness, because I meet a lot of college-age kids and I say I was in the Moonies and they're like, what's that? And I'm like, Sun Myung Moon says he's 10 times greater than Jesus or any other leader in human history, and he wants to take over the world, and democracy is satanic, and he wants to set up a theocracy, and he owns the Washington Times, and he owns the National Press Club building in DC, and he owns the largest fish processing plant in the world in Kodiak, Alaska, and he wants to take over the world, and he still does want to take over the world. And of course, when I was a leader in the Moonies, I would run into recruiters like Nancy and think, oh, Scientology, what a cult. And people like Nancy would run into people like me or in the Krishnas or something going, wow, those people are really in cults. And as Nancy was just mentioning to me before, this is the first time I got a chance to meet her, she said, I didn't realize I was in a cult until I read this book by this ex-Moonie. And I read it and I was like, holy mackerel, this is all about my experience, even though he's writing about the Moonies and other cults. And I said, which book was that? She said, it was the book by the guy who broke his leg. And I said, oh, that's my book. Because I fell asleep at the wheel of a Moonie van and broke my leg, and that's how my family found me, and that's how they did an intervention with me, and that's where I learned about brainwashing and mind control and the fact that it exists. And I understood what I did as a leader to recruit people into the Moonies and indoctrinate them through all their workshops. And when I first got out and went on national television, I felt incredibly guilty over all the people I had recruited into the Moonies, that I had helped the Moon get a foothold in the U.S. I started meeting ex-Scientologists, and they started filling me in on what was really going on inside. I got to meet Paulette Cooper, who wrote the first book, critical of L. Ron Hubbard, and how they literally, espionage, broke into her apartment, typed a bomb threat to Scientology on her typewriter in order to try to get her arrested. She was arrested and almost sent to jail for something that they manufactured. And indeed, you know, they do place people inside of government entities in order to spy, in order to lobby, in order to destroy information that people are submitting, in order to manipulate and control. So I did write this piece saying it's time to end Scientology's tax exemption, and I frankly think many other cults should lose their tax exemption status too. We should stop supporting their work to enslave people and undermine the United States as well as free people all over the world. And I've been doing this work for 35 years because I am absolutely convinced that unless people like Anonymous and the general public understands the fact that these groups exist and they're trying to take over. They're trying to take over person by person, they're trying to take over institution by institution, and unless we can create a grassroots movement, I'm afraid the Obama administration is not going to do a darn thing, because they have too many lobbyists, too many powerful forces lobbying. If we can create a viral internet ground roots movement, if more former members can speak out, if more people who've seen loved ones whose lives have been destroyed speak out, then we can do something. I really believe we can get their tax exemption taken away, and then we can move on to the Moonies and other groups like that. And frankly, I think people like David Miscavige should be put in jail. And in talking with Jerry Armstrong, he's one of my personal heroes, he was saying, Steve, there's this law, human rights law, Statute 18-241, that says any conspiracy to deprive people of their human rights, punishable by fine and up to 10 years in jail. And who better than David Miscavige to fit that criteria? So when I was asked would I come and add my voice, absolutely. But I want to try to just take 2 minutes more and just say that brainwashing and mind control exists. There is such a thing as hypnosis, and I believe the communications course and the TRs and many other techniques in Scientology are in fact using hypnosis. I don't know how many people knew that Hubbard was a stage hypnotist before, but in my professional opinion, it's absolutely using hypnotic techniques and methods. And from my research and talking with former military intelligence officials who were basically in the 50s told, find out what communist brainwashing is. They outlined criteria that anyone could look through the criteria. Robert J. Lifton was one. He had 8 criteria. Margaret Singer has 6 conditions of mind control. And I basically took their 2 models and I altered it, and I took Festinger's cognitive dissonance theory, which talks about the thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And if you can control one, you can manipulate the other 2 to reduce dissonance and fall in line. I took that model and added information control, and I created what's called the BITE model of mind control. And it's on my website at freedomofmind.com. It's in my books. The B stands for controlling people's behavior. The I stands for controlling their information. T stands for controlling their thoughts. And E stands for controlling their emotions. And within those 4 components, there are subvariables like controlling sleep, controlling food, controlling clothing, controlling names, getting permission, rewards and punishment, all designed to create dependency and obedience. And so you can literally go through the BITE model and apply it to any relationship or family, dysfunctional family system, or political cult, therapy cult, business cult, religious cult, because it's a behavioral model. It's not looking at weird beliefs about space aliens. It's looking at what practical beliefs are being used to deprive people of their free will, to not let them have informed consent, in other words, to use deception to get them involved in an incremental way, and to sequentially destroy their identity and their relationship with their family and their relationship to their goals, whether it's educational goals or creative goals, and create a new cult identity that's in the image of the leader, that's dependent and obedient on this authoritarian structure.